Good morning, everybody. Curtis Wilkerson here with Inside Arkansas and the pod at the Palace. The wait is almost over. Man, it feels like Arkansas basketball hasn't played in months. They've only played a couple times this month, to be fair, but we're almost there. And we'll get into the actual weeds of this Oakland game itself tomorrow, what it means for Arkansas. We will see from the Razorbacks, the final tune-up before SEC play. Are they healthy for a change? All those things. We'll talk about it. What Oakland does well, who to watch, you know the drill. The typical preview, right? But this morning, I think I just wanted to spend a few minutes on like the obvious storyline for tomorrow night, which is that, basically we all understand the history, right? What does this game against Oakland mean for John Calipari, if anything at all? It's a valid question. Like if you've lived under a rock or you only follow, Arkansas basketball and not much college hoops outside of that, or if you just forgot, John Calipari's final game at Kentucky was an 80-76 loss to 14 seed Oakland in the NCAA tournament, first round back in March. I remember watching it in my living room in disbelief, but it was stunningly predictable, I think, if we're being honest here. It was a nightmare for Big Blue Nation after the St. Peter's loss, a couple years prior. And I think it's fair to say like the door of frustration was already very much open with John Calipari, Kentucky, that entire situation. This probably just blew it off the hinges, right? It almost felt like there was no return. I know Mitch Barnhart and, Cal had their conversation or whatever it was after the season. Oh, he's coming back and everything, but it just felt like it was time for a change. Everybody know that. Cal's talked about it. He felt like Kentucky needed a new voice. I think he needed a new audience. Both parties, I think, are better off at this point. But regardless, now here's Oakland up next on the schedule for John Calipari's first team at Arkansas. And look, I am not going to sit here and try to spin this, to everybody listening as this big grudge match or a revenge game or anything like that. It's not. It's not that at all. But Oakland's got the same coach, Greg Kampe. Great coach, by the way. Awesome sweater game, too. If you guys haven't been paying attention to Greg Kampe's sweater game, it's elite. Check him out against Michigan State. Check him out at the tournament they were at in Hawaii over Christmas break. The dude would win every ugly sweater contest. Good stuff. But there's only like 3 players back on Oakland's roster who even touched the floor in that NCAA tournament game last March. Jack Golke's 10 threes are gone. Trey Townsend, who was a big part of that, is gone. Completely different team. It is. And I really do believe John Calipari when he talks about, this is the first page in the first chapter of a new book at Arkansas. The fresh start, right? But I also believe that there's something to be said for, like finishing one book before starting another, especially when it comes to the personal journey. There might be another page or two he wants written in his previous story, And John Calipari's won 865 basketball games. We talked about that on yesterday's Inside the Numbers. That's a lot. Like beating Oakland on a random December non-conference game, it's not going to rewrite history. It's not going to right the wrong from last March for him. It's not. It's never going to happen with Kentucky fans, I don't think. And then from a national perspective, I mean, we can be honest here, he probably needs to do a good amount of March Madness damage, steer clear of the early exit express out of the tournament while he's here in Fayetteville, if he's ever going to escape those allegations, if he's going to turn those into blips on the radars instead of, things that signify the beginning of the end, right? But I do think whether he admits it openly or not, and he probably won't. I don't know that we're going to talk to him. I could probably guarantee you we ain't going to talk to Cal before this game. There's no denying the symbolism involved with this game against Oakland. That's where I'm at with it. The symbolism involved, it's crazy. It's hard not to think about it. I mean, consider the irony here, right? Of an Oakland team that, accelerated John Calipari's exit from Lexington, Coming to Bud Walton Arena now, a place where you likely would never be the coach for the home team had these guys not delivered a low point moment in your career. I mean, it's kind of crazy. That's why it really caught my eye when Arkansas scheduled this game. I'm glad they did it. I really am. But I think, given Cal's situation, you can be happy with your new surroundings while simultaneously being pissed at some of the circumstances that created them, right? Like, I don't think he's looking at this, Oakland specifically or whatever and going, I'd still be at Rupp Arena if it wasn't for losing these assholes. No, I don't think it's that at all. I really do. I genuinely believe him. And he looks refreshed. He looks rejuvenated. He looks like he's having fun. I think he's happy at Arkansas. I absolutely do. And I believe him when he says he felt like it was time for a change. He felt like Kentucky needed a new voice. But you don't think he's not a little bit salty about how it all went down and how it all played out and the role that Oakland wound up playing in this? Like, not only was it sort of the straw that broke the camel's back over there, it really spearheaded some fundamental changes in philosophy for a man who is an active Hall of Famer that's been doing it one way for a long, long time. You know what I mean? Think about it for a second. Do you think that John Calipari comes to the conclusion that he can't keep relying so heavily on 18-year-old freshmen in pressure situations in March against a bunch of grown-ass men if that Oakland game didn't happen? He references it every time he's in front of a microphone. He's talking about 18-year-old kids, and we're playing 25, 26. It gets older and older every time he talks about it. It's like the fish that you catch. It gets bigger every time you tell the story. Like, eventually he's going to be like, yeah, and it's crazy. We got to the NCAA tournament. We're playing peak LeBron James. It's nuts. You get the point, though. Like, I mean, do you think that John Calipari comes to the realization that he had too many mouths to feed? He needs to trim down a rotation to 9 guys. Had he not had to do the postseason soul searching that comes with an upset like that, with the season ending the way that it did there? Because had they won that game, there's a pretty good chance they probably would have beat North Carolina State in the next round, made a nice little run, got back to the second weekend. At that point, Cal's probably not looking for reasons why things went south, because they wouldn't have gone south. Like, winning masks a lot of underlying issues. He'd have been looking for all the reasons why things went right and what he needs to continue to do, what worked for him. Instead, he had to do that soul searching. It's interesting. And honestly, and it's not just him. I think that's another interesting sidebar to this entire saga, not just the Oakland game, which is just kind of it's fascinating. It's an interesting storyline. But going back to Lexington, right? And playing at Rupp Arena, going, knock on wood, because the SEC is so freaking loaded, but going back to an NCAA tournament and what that's going to mean, what that's going to symbolize in an opening round game, given history, right? We talk so much about the John Calipari angle of this, and rightfully so. He's a larger than life figure. He's the biggest show in town wherever he's at. All those things are true. Polarizing guy, Hall of Fame head coach. We get it. But it's not just him. He's not alone in this. Like, Cal took a lot of the heat for that loss against Oakland, as he should have. But he ain't alone. Chuck Martin, Shane Coleman, Bruiser Flint. Think about all the guys on that coaching staff that were impacted by that entire situation too, that are going to be having a lot of the similar feelings and emotions that John Calipari is. Not so much in this Oakland game, but just what it symbolizes, because they all went through that together. What's it going to be like for those guys going back to Rupp? What's it going to be like prepping for an NCAA tournament? I'm sure that some of those dudes I just mentioned were involved in, the personnel scout on Jack Golke, and then he gets butt naked for 10 threes out there. You know what I mean? And then what about the players? That's the big thing about all this that stands out to me, because they're the ones that have to actually be on the floor and perform. Cal could put together a home run scouting report, but if they don't make shots, it doesn't matter. Right? And then the same thing could be said about Cal making mistakes and players bailing them out. We all heard the little speech after the Michigan game, so I guess it works both ways there. But what about just the unpleasant memory that Oakland game created for Adu Thero and DJ Wagner and Zvonimir Ivisic, who are all at Arkansas now, but we're all part of that Kentucky team. You know, those three guys combined for 5 points on 2 of 9 shooting against Oakland that day. You think that doesn't stick in their craw? You think they don't think about that? Would a blowout win over this version of Oakland Monday night in Bud Walton Arena, would that rectify it for them? No. But if you don't think it hasn't been on their mind during this layoff, that's the other part about it too. Sometimes you don't have time to think about stuff like that, right? Because you're playing 2-3 games a week. You finish a game, you're doing some rehab recovery, getting some shots up the next day. Boom, you're into scouting report. Next day is walkthrough and travel. Bang, you're playing again. There's a 9-day layoff leading up to this game. Who scheduled this? Why'd you put it here? You know what I mean? They should have had this one sandwiched between this game should have been where the UTSA game was, that trap game, right? Where it was sandwiched between Miami and Michigan. You should have had it right there, because there's no way you can overlook this one, given all the storylines that people are going to be talking about. That's where I would have put this one, man. Wouldn't have played this game where I've got, you know, the fellas being able to think about it for 9 days, and then you get to go home for Christmas, and like you think, you know, cousin Chris at the Christmas dinner is not talking to you about that game, and you got to go back and prepare for it. Talk about you know, testing the mental toughness of some of these guys, man. It's wild. But no, it's not gonna it's not gonna rectify it. But I'll tell you this: if you don't think it hasn't been on the mind of these players over the last 9 days, and they won't have a little extra chip on their shoulder for this one, you're crazy. You're crazy. I guarantee you they do. And they'll channel the emotions the right way. They'll say the right things in front of a microphone. I know I'd feel it. And when I was coaching, you know, if we lost to a team in our conference tournament, it's all I would think about leading up to playing them the next season. They could have a new coach. They'd have a bunch of new players. Didn't matter to me. I wanted to get them back, man. I wanted that get back. I wanted it bad. Much less a national tournament. Been there too. That hits a little bit different. And we're talking NAIA basketball, man. Like I couldn't even imagine it at this one. I think it's a cool opportunity for these guys to get to play them again, because a lot of times you don't see this. You don't see schools who lose to a mid-major in the NCAA tournament schedule said mid-major the very next season. Good on Cal and the guys for doing it. I'm looking forward to it. And at least there's a storyline, right? One that's a little bit deeper and maybe even more nuanced than we may really understand here in Fayetteville, not even because of the game and the upset and everything that happened itself, but just because of what it represented and what it symbolized for so many of these guys. It beats the hell out of your typical, you know, post-Christmas non-conference game against a no-name opponent. Should be a fun one. And we'll preview the game itself tomorrow. We'll get into the weeds. We'll talk matchups, what we want to see from Arkansas, what they need to do to get some style points, not overlooking Tennessee, all those things. We'll dive into it tomorrow. But I did just want to talk about kind of what this game means and just what it symbolizes on the schedule and for some of these guys. It's interesting to me. Maybe I'm just weird to be fascinated by it, but it's interesting. I'm anxious to hear if Cal says anything about it after the game. Probably depend on how it goes. You know what I mean? It would probably depend on how it goes. And I'll have to go check. I wonder if, you know, it's tough for Oakland because they played, I think the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, they played out in Hawaii. I can't remember the name of it was a little Christmas classic, Christmas tournament. And then they flew back home. They haven't had much time. I don't know if they've done a media availability or not, but I'd be curious to hear what Greg Campy, you know, might have to say about it. And what it, you know, it's obviously that was probably, without going back and looking at his resume, the biggest win of his career. And he understands what that means and everything. I think him and Cal have a good relationship too, but just fascinating. I just want to hear what everybody has to say about it. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Appreciate you guys, obviously, and always, for tuning in, tapping in. I'm just so thankful that we're getting back to having some actual basketball to talk about. I was thinking about it this morning before I actually recorded this to put it out, and I was like, man, I think I've kind of gone through every statistic possible, every angle I can think of. All right, we did some recruiting. What the hell is there left to talk about before previewing this game? We got 2 days. And I thought, you know what? Let's talk about what this Oakland game might mean. Gonna be fun. We're almost there. And SEC season is gonna be it's gonna be a freaking blast. I can't wait to cover it. But y'all have a good day. Appreciate you as always for tuning in. Make sure you get subscribed to Inside Arkansas YouTube channel. I say that every time. The reason I do is because I look at the amount of people that watch, and then I get feedback. I can run these reports, and I can see the viewers who are subscribed versus not subscribed. So just click the button. It's all good. It's free. It helps us out, though. We appreciate it. Thank you, guys. We'll see you in the morning. It's been Curtis Wilson with Inside Arkansas on Pod the Palace. We'll talk a little bit of hoops, get in the weeds tomorrow. We'll see y'all later.